So, one of the super consistent things that I hear from everybody I talk to, frontline data folks, people outside of the data organizations, even my parents, is job titles in data right now are really challenging, really hard to understand. Is an analyst somebody who uses Excel? Is it somebody who ingests data? Is it somebody who generates data? We've got this idea of like analytics engineer, we've got data engineers, we've got data scientists, and now we have more and more people working sort of outside of traditional data roles with like deep understanding of SQL and predictive analytics. And it's hard. Job titles are really hard. And this is a clip from a much longer interview that I did with Stephen and Emily, where we talk specifically about the challenge of sort of what name do we put to these jobs that we do and that we're hiring for. So here it is. It's a good one.
So let me ask one of the things that has sort of been kicking around on analytics Twitter and sort of the data social ecosystem has been this idea of career progress and like career ladders and like what it means to succeed or advance as a professional like in the data world in 2020. And I was wondering sort of how that's resonating with y'all, especially sort of given the almost like branching nature of your own pathways.
Yeah, Caitlin Mormon's post on this I thought was really great. So
Absolutely.
opportunity to give her a shout out. Like I think it was a 3-part series, and they were really phenomenal reads. I don't know what this role means for my career. Like,
Yeah.
I did not. If you had asked me 8 months ago, I've been in this role now for almost 6 months. If you'd asked me 8 months ago, like, do you see yourself being outside of the data team? I would have hard noed
Right.
that idea. I don't think. I think some people find comfort in a career ladder and in like being able to know what like here's the next 5 or 10 year plan. And the approach that I'm taking is like, I know where I want to be in 15 years.
Sure.
And there are lots of routes to get there. And so I'm just going to say yes to opportunities that bring me closer to that. And that may or may not be in the data team. And that changes how I think about what next steps are or should
Sure.
be. But it's just like, I have my North Star metric and I know what success looks like. And there are lots of ways to get there. I don't need a clearly laid out plan.
Sure.
That doesn't work for everyone. And so
Right.
if you want to be like the greatest data engineer there ever was, a career ladder is a great way to measure yourself
Mm-hmm.
for success.
Yeah, in my experience, so you heard from my original story of how I got this job. I sort of had a target for this job and was taking steps to make that happen.
Right.
But at Zapier, it has definitely, we've actually transitioned over the last 2 years or so to having more structured career framework, growth framework, career ladder type material. And I do find that helpful, even as someone who is prone to jumping around broadly. There are still skills that you need in leadership that are descriptive enough, no matter where in the organization you are, data team or otherwise, and having those skills explicitly labeled as things that the company values, I think is super important. And Zapier does a really good job of having a framework that has parallel pathing for ICs and management tracks. And that has also been really valuable, in my opinion, because it lets you see how you might advance doing something like an IC role. You're obviously going to tend towards leadership in the sense of people respecting your opinion and having more sway over decisions and that type of thing, regardless of which path you take as you get more senior. But there are skills of how to leverage that expertise that you can advance in and actually make a significant difference for the business. And so I think because management has sort of more well-defined leadership qualities that are mandatory, people associate leadership and management quite closely, but there are plenty of leaders who are not necessarily managers, and having an explicit track for the people who want to take that path is super valuable. And so you can do that inside of the data org. You could be a really sophisticated analyst. You could either be really technically good. You could be really good at communicating with stakeholders. All of those things make you more valuable to the business and should be reflected in the sort of level of your career that you are in. But you don't have to go straight down a management path or head of the data team or data team manager in order to advance. And I think that's important for everyone.
It feels like right now, sort of the idea of analysis and sort of data organizations is really feeling kind of turbulent to me. It feels like job titles that used to mean something really specific maybe are starting to mean something new. We're seeing really like data heavy roles emerge outside of the data organization. We're seeing like really this like hybrid sort of role. I think of the analytics engineer as sort of this like really new space. And I wonder if the sort of recent surge of interest in formal career ladders is in some way related to like the sort of professional turbulence that we're observing.
That's a really great question.
Yeah, because I actually offer some career coaching and I like talking to people about career and pathing and all of that sort of thing. So I think about this a lot. And one of the conclusions that I have drawn over the last year or so is I wish there was a little bit more clarity in data titles, and they are evolving, but I have sort of my wish list of what I think those titles should mean. But there's problems in that if you take a specific title, data scientist being the classic one probably over the last 5 years,
Yeah.
there are 3 or 4 or 5 specific distinct roles that get sort of lumped into a data scientist title.
Mm-hmm.
But the data scientist title is likely the one that gets comped the highest of any of those things.
Right.
And so you have a very personal incentive to go for a data scientist title from a purely compensation perspective, regardless of whether that reflects accurately the work that you're actually doing.
Right.
And you can make a really strong argument that, hey, at this other company, that's a data scientist title, so it should be a data scientist title here, which means I should get higher comp. And that, from a career progression and sort of coaching perspective, I encourage people to lean into, because I think you deserve to go get whatever you can get in terms of compensation and benefits and things like that. But from a company perspective and from a job hunting clarity perspective, I really wish that the titles would settle a little bit and people would understand exactly what the job is that they are applying for or looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, there's something to be said that across the board titles are hard. We probably just see it really obviously in the data space, but I mean, my title's internal strategy consultant. What does that mean? Like titles are hard. And I think it's probably across the board hard. I think the question of like, are career ladders and titles related? Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. But titles across the board are hard. And we see it a lot with data scientists. I think that is the canonical example, because at some orgs, data scientists are data analysts.
Yeah.
And at some orgs, they're machine learning engineers. But across the board, I think like the root answer here is titles are hard.
Yeah, I can definitely lean into that. Over the last 2 years, my titles have been special projects and executive team program manager. So neither of those are particularly descriptive, and they certainly don't do the same thing across different organizations. So I certainly have that struggle even in a personal level.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like it really does a disservice to applicants as well. Hiring for analytics roles at WordPress.com has been really tricky because the baseline sort of technical competence that's required to succeed in the role, I think, is not consistent with most of the other job titles, which are exactly the same, right? To be a data analyst elsewhere, I think can be a very different experience. And so we end up just having to reject a lot of people out of hand. And that kind of feels bad. And I imagine it probably feels bad on their side too.
Sure.
Yeah, we found that a lot when we were hiring for a data analyst, where at some companies, data analyst means really good at Excel.
Yeah.
At GitLab, it means you can work from the command line and you know what a cron job is, and you're going to write DBT SQL and understand Jinja and for loops, and those are different data analysts.
Yeah, job titles are hard. You summed it up. You got it. Yeah.
Totally.